Hi, thank you so much for joining us for another Candidate Corner. And today we are going to be talking with Bryan Logan, and he's your candidate for Senate District 8. Hi, Bryan. How are you today?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm doing better every minute. Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. This is a pretty big deal. You're running for Senate there in District 8. Tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. I've got two versions. I've got the nice weather version for when it's nice outside, and then we've got several good weeks of practice for the cold version, which is my almost, I don't know if you'd want to call it rap or auctioneering version, where you go really, really fast. So I'll try to balance that out just a little bit. So I was born and raised in the district, grew up in the district, graduated here in the district from high school. I've got two children, two grandchildren, and a lovely wife. I got to throw that in there. My wife has been super supportive. Got a lovely wife, and so we've been in the ministry pastoring now for 15 years, going on 16 years. This year we got a small cow calf operation. We've got a couple of small businesses. I sit on five different boards. The first board that I was elected to was Gordon Cooper Technology Center, which is Career Tech. That was back in 2009. And then I picked up the State of Oklahoma Construction Industries Board, Oklahoma Building Inspectors Association Board, American Farmers and Ranchers, which is insurance. They're local and county president for both of those. And so beyond that, my background is kind of construction in all sorts and fashions from the ground up. I'm a building inspector. That includes I have building inspector license, electrical inspector license, plumbing inspector license. Been in community development, so very familiar with planning, all stages of planning and zoning and all those good things. So that's why I'm always telling people that zoning, when we're crying for zoning, it is a double-edged sword, and I've been, a witness to that firsthand. And so, outside of that, I spent 6 years as a program manager for CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grants. I was the program manager, so we facilitated the meetings, stakeholder meetings, public hearings. Was over the 5-year consolidated plan, the 1-year annual action plan, the CAPER, System 3, all that good stuff. So, and I don't like to bore people with that because that's more of a resume if you was applying for a job. And this is a little different because it is serving the state and specifically District 8. And so, what I tell people most generally on the doorstep is that's my resume back there. I said, but being in the ministry for 22 years, pastoring almost 16 years, that's where your heart and compassion and all that comes into play. So if you don't have compassion, I'll tell this to anybody watching. If you don't have compassion and you're not a kind person, you probably don't need to be in any kind of public office. So that's where my ministry really kind of comes into play is being a servant, serving people, being a not only a set of ears in the district, but being a voice as well. I hope that wasn't too long.
Oh, not at all. And it's nice to get to know people. It really is, and you can't do that without hearing some things about you. So I think that's great. But I do want to ask you, so I mean, you've been a very busy man. I mean, boards and
Sure.
commissions and all of this. What made you decide you wanted to run? Because this seat was vacated. So what made you decide you wanted to run for the seat?
That part is probably the most interesting part. So it happened very. Um, be careful what wording I use here. So I'll kind of go back over 20, probably close to 25 years ago. I was actually talking to an assistant at the Capitol, and she planted a little bitty seed in my mind. And she told me, she said, you need to get on as many boards as you can and take some political science courses and just, get involved. And then at some point, you need to serve your state on a state level. And so I took that because I was just a young man out of high school, and I just kind of put it in the file, didn't cultivate it, didn't water it, didn't do anything with it. And so fast forward to this past year, my son, which is my youngest child, was planning on getting married. And so me and my wife was talking this past year, it would have probably been the beginning of 24, late 23. And she was asking me about all the 5 different boards that I sit on. She said, are you going to serve on those boards? What is your plans? And I told her, I said, well, it's not costing us a lot of money. There's not a lot of time. Most of them meet quarterly, so it's not costing us a lot. It gives me a chance to serve. I absolutely love networking. I love putting pieces together. And if I can help, with resourcing and stuff of that nature, I love that. And so I told her and said, you never know. I said, it might come in handy in the future. Fast forward to this summer, not really being involved in politics, just being just a common person with a busy life. Me and my wife was having a conversation just a few months out from my son moving out and getting married. And we were talking about the future. And, I found that seed way back there filed. And I told her, I said, at some point in my life, I'd like to run for state office. Of course, as any wife would do, unexpectedly hearing that, she was a little surprised. And so she said, when? And I said, I don't know. I said, I'd like to do that at some point. So we had no idea what was taking place, in the background when I'd had this conversation with just me and my wife. And so fast forward a few months, and we catch wind that Roger Thompson's resigning, and I was approached by somebody, asked me if I'd ever considered running, and I said, well, actually, I have. And so they said, well, I think you ought to think about it. And so after much prayer, lots of prayer, and kind of just reaching out, trying to get a general consensus, an idea of what others thought, we made the decision to run. So, and I know that sounds probably outlandish, crazy, but that is how it happened.
So I'm just curious, what were you doing at the state capitol as a young man?
So I was actually there. It's kind of interesting. So I was actually there at the time. I was in construction, and so I told you from the time I took Gordon Cooper Career Tech in high school, residential and commercial carpentry. So we was actually there moving people out of offices, painting offices, remodeling. We remodeled a few of the offices there. So I was the young man that was constantly going back and forth. I am so sorry about that. Going back and forth to the truck to get tools and such. And so, that's what I was doing there. Construction.
That's very cool. And so but you didn't get a bug. You didn't get a bug to serve, right, at the Capitol. It was just kind of something interesting that she
No,
said
it
to
was
you
just
that you
planted
fired
there.
back in the head.
Yeah. Yeah. I never, I had no idea that all the boards, like when I was selected and nominated for a board, it was never in the back of my mind, like never even crossed my mind. And next thing you know, you wake up 14, 15 years later and you're sitting on all these boards going, and that's crazy how life works. Like never planned it. It was not an intention, not a design, my design. It was somebody's design. It was by design, just not my design.
Now, the town that you're from is really pretty small, but your district is not terribly small. What do you see as the concerns? What are people telling you on the doorstep? What are they worried about? What do you feel like you need to go there and help them with the most?
Oh, we are very, very rural. District 8 is so rural. And matter of fact, that's why it's such a large landmass, because it's so rural. So the little town I'm from is a very small population, but my whole county, and this is kind of my joke that I've told for years. When you think of Okfuskee County, we don't have a single Walmart or a stoplight in the entire county. That's how rural we are. No stoplights, no Walmarts. So in the entire county. And so when you get to looking at Okmulgee County, McIntosh County, the southern part of Creek County, the western, be the northwestern part of Muskogee County, it's very, very rural. So obviously the entire state in rural areas has issues with healthcare. We don't have a lot of healthcare. Just services in general it's kind of remote. Now, I will say this: we have really good small schools. We don't have the same problem in education that your metropolitan schools has. for the most part. Now, I'm not saying everything's perfect. Don't I hope nobody misquotes me there. Uh, but obviously, all these things are things that we have to work on. The things that you're hearing at the doorstep is uh, taxes is a big one. You know, a lot of people are want to do away with either income tax or property tax. Like I said, the majority of the voters, though, it's kind of all over the board. It kind of depends on what field they're in life, what stage of life. So, like I said, most of the people that you catch at the house are that generation of over 60, and they're looking at high price on medication, which obviously we know all about that. Um, Insurance, and that's a big one that, I don't know how as a state senator you attack that, approach that, but it's something, inflation's something that we're all dealing with. And so if you can't move the needle on this, you approach it on a different angle and go after something that we can help on. So several different bills out there in committee that I would fully support, and for various reasons. Uh, if you'd cut property tax at 65, I was going to put my phone on silent and put it on Wi-Fi, but I didn't know if I'd have good enough signal where I'm at. So if we did something like that, 65, I think that would be great. Uh, I'm for a consumption tax for sure, a fair tax, something that, and I kind of joke about this, and not joke, but I say, if we have a consumption tax, fair tax, then everybody's paying, even if you're still here illegal, and you're going to pay that consumption tax. So lots of small issues like that. Economic development is something big because we're so rural. We don't have a lot of economic development. And like I said, you could go on and on about basically the same thing that the rest of the state faces. We're just kind of remote and rural where we're at.
Well, I'm curious because where you are to your north and east, there have been some, I mean, people have been up in arms about I don't like to say wind farms, they're not farms, wind installations and solar. And there's been an idea for a battery storage place, kind of in these rural areas. What are you hearing, and what are your thoughts on kind of the green energy issue in Oklahoma?
It's kind of alarming that, of course, McIntosh County's kind of sounded the alarm on that. And so we've been involved ever since we've announced candidacy with McIntosh County. What's very alarming is I'm primarily the one that brings it up. I don't know that I've had 5 people bring it up in any of the other 4 counties, which is very alarming to me. That, matter of fact, I was in a meeting yesterday, and I'll say this: we was at a meeting and somebody brought up wind turbines, and they all called them windmills. And a county assessor, I won't say which county, made the mention that because they was out of McIntosh County, they wasn't going anywhere else. And I don't feel that way. Just because they left one county doesn't mean they're going to try another angle, doesn't mean they're going to hit all the other counties. And so it's actually kind of alarming because when I bring it up, nobody's aware of the situation. It's almost kind of like it's been hidden. And I know it's all there in plain sight. We see it because we see the different groups and we see the different things coming at it. But it is very alarming that it's not got a lot of attraction, a lot of traction outside of McIntosh County. And I know Lincoln County and Hughes County, but I can't figure out why Okfuskee County, Okmulgee County is being so quiet about it. It's coming. There's leases right now. Now, when I say it's coming, I'm saying they're leasing property as we speak,
Well, and
probably.
that's a good kind of a good conversation to have, because you mentioned zoning a minute ago, and coming from a rural area of a large county, I can understand that. And I think people are very concerned when you start talking about zoning, because they feel like it's my property. I don't want to get zoned into something that then I
Sure.
can't, do anything about. So there's some reticence there, but why would you feel like maybe that's a double-edged sword, like you said earlier?
It'd be more regulations on the people. Um, so just from experience in the past, you come in and you zone a piece of property, uh, and more than likely, you kind of go on the fact that the agricultural zoning versus residential. So if you ever went to do a lot split, if you're zoned in a certain classification and you go to try to build you a lean-to for your goats or your chickens, they're going to say you're zoned residential because you don't have more. And they could set those in the zoning ordinances, the zoning book. But and that's the biggest thing is selling off or trying to build when you're not, classified in that particular zoning would be the big issues. Like I said, you have 5 acres, maybe they zoned you agricultural. You sell off 1 acre to your child, your grandchild, and now all of a sudden you've lost that zoning classification because they rezoned you. And now they're telling you can't have your 2 milk cows and your 3 goats or that's the reason I say that, because
Yeah.
they will have to break it up and classify it in that particular, those types of zoning. So that's why it'd be a double-edged sword, because it'd be more regulation to the people,
Yeah.
if that
And
makes
but
sense.
yeah, but hopefully, I keep hoping that maybe there'll be some regulation, some zoning that will zone out some of the things that can encroach on, that land, that we need for farmland, that we need to
Sure.
have to run on, that we need to, it's tricky for people, and I don't think people in the city understand some of the different issues that people who live on it more rurally
Absolutely.
have. So, is there something else too that might, because you talked about taxation, and it is with inflation, taxation is an issue. There have been a couple of, the governor has talked about reducing the income tax. I would assume that you would be behind something like that for certain.
Sure. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about, because we were talking earlier about the green energy issue, and I've written several things just myself specifically about all of the tax incentives that the green industry is getting, particularly here in Oklahoma. What are your feelings about tax incentives and about giving tax dollars to private businesses?
Well, you and I both know that if it wasn't for the subsidies, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. Um, you know, that's the biggest thing that I see in part of that, not the biggest thing. There's so many little things in that, and I liken it to this. This is kind of my little analogy that I made. Uh, when we look at the green energy agenda, the scam, however you want to look at it, one man said it like this: you wouldn't sit at the end of a sewer pipe waiting for something good to come out of it. And that's kind of how you have to look at the wind and solar and everything that they're trying to shove upon us. I will say this: looking at the Oklahoma Republican platform, you'll notice under natural resources that it says we support essential wind and solar. Under natural resources, it says we support wind and solar. It's got to be essential. There's nothing essential on that. So there's nothing essential about that. Um, why we would be giving tax breaks to out of state, out of country corporations is beyond me. And when you break it all down, so, I'll expound on this even though you didn't ask me to. So the farming is near and dear to my heart. And here's what we got to look at as Oklahomans. We are losing more and more land that's currently in production or just out of production. And when I say farm, whether that's wheat, soybeans, corn, cattle, we're losing so much land at a high rate of speed. And so, unfortunately, you got small type farms, 160 acres. We'll say less than 500 acres, and that generation, once they don't like to use this terminology, but once they die off, the children, grandchildren, their heirs are saying we don't want to work. we're going to cash out, we're going to sell it off. They subdivide the land. And so the majority of that's going out of production. And we still got to feed America. And so I actually commented the other day on somebody's post. I don't know if we're going to learn to eat wind turbine blades, or I mean, are we going to be chomping on plastic batteries? But we still got to feed America. So, we've got to figure all this out. We got to figure this out before we just, make decisions. It's going to be everlasting.
I've noticed something myself in that we have this kind of tendency to look at the end of our nose before we look down the road. And so we end up making policy that just affects the short term, and we're not playing that out to find out what it's going to be down the
Absolutely.
road. Um, and that's a good question too, because I don't even know the answer to this myself. How do you get people to game these things? Because it seems to me, and I think it seems to be for a lot of people too, especially right now, it's all about money. It's not it's what can we get out of it?
Yep.
I want something. Tell me what I get out of it. Well, it's a little more than what do I get out of it now. It's what is it going to do to me later on? I mean, do you
Sure.
think that's kind of an accurate train of
Oh,
thought there?
absolutely. Yeah. No, most people are living in the moment. And when I say living in the moment, we're talking about people that like I said, cash out now and worry about the effects later. And if we ain't careful, we're going to get so far down the road that we're not going to have a place to turn around and stop and say, "Hey, we didn't think about this." Now we've seen a lot of things over the past few years that we didn't really. So in our rural district, land is kind of readily available, inexpensive compared to other areas. And so, just driving through the district today, I can't tell you how many dilapidated marijuana farms that I've seen, and it just kind of reminds you we rolled this thing out, and the majority of them. So I kind of pay attention where I'm at on my map, and I look at a land records as I'm going. And so today specifically, I was out in the middle of nowhere, and it said Alaska, Illinois, all these states that these farms are on. That's got barricades and trash everywhere. But like I said, the major 90% of them was out of state, different states throughout the U.S. And you're thinking that worked out really great. They came in, they bought up the land cheap, threw up a bunch of temporary buildings, and now somebody's got to clean that up when they're gone.
They're like
So I'm just using
locusts.
that as an example of
Yeah.
we better roll things out the right way.
Yeah. No, I think that's an excellent. Did you guys have in your area, when you just said you were driving by some dilapidated um marijuana farms, did you have any Chinese ownership that you knew about of land?
Well, yes.
Okay.
As far as names now, the corporate name, the business name, absolutely. Where that office was tied back to and who purchased the license and stuff may be a different story. I've never really done any investigation like that. Just looking at the names on the land records.
But that concerning to you, just the idea that we would have people not Americans owning American land?
Well, sure, it should be concerning to any of us.
Well, I find though that some people that you talk to don't quite put two and two together to to figure out. Well, now all of a sudden they have their own little plot of land there, and that's even a national security hazard, not just a state security hazard. So I
Right.
don't think I think there are people that don't put two and two together to come up with that. So when you are at the Capitol, what do you think is something? I mean, you're going to be in a very interesting position because the election is, when did you say? March?
March 4th is the primary. April
Okay.
1st. if a runoff is necessary, and then May 13th. So gotta love that April 1st. Gotta love that. Wouldn't you love to everything to come down to April 1st, and you have friends like mine that's either going to call and tell you congratulations April Fools, or you won April Fools, you lost April Fools. So
It's
terrible
kind of
day to have
bad
an election.
timing, isn't it?
Yeah, terrible day.
Well,
So
you're going to have kind of an odd situation though, because i- going to the Capitol in the middle of a session, essentially. What do
you'll have
you
about
have you put some thought into that to think about how you navigate that?
you're going to be at the last week. Whoever's the sitting senator is going to be there the last week. I they wouldn't be any point to put you on a committee. I wouldn't think everything's going to be done. So, um, yeah, I have, but not taking it to much thought because there's no telling what will happen that last week. But yeah, you're not going to be involved as far as that goes. You're not going to be able to get much accomplished. Let's say that. Uh, so
Yeah, just really awkward timing for an
very,
election.
very, and I don't know that has been a question that several people has asked me that I don't know the answer to. People's like, why did they wait so long? I have no idea. I have no idea why.
Yeah, and because it does, I mean, it does actually put your whole district without representation during the part where we actually have people at the Capitol doing things that you could thereby be affecting. So it's a weird one. Well,
I
we're
agree.
about finished for today. Do you have anything else that you can tell us to kind of wrap up? Give us your elevator speech.
Sure, I'll make it quick. So, I'm a conservative Republican, and when people ask priorities, even priorities in the state, I mentioned this the other day. I said, "Look, I'm a Christian conservative. That's my values first and foremost. You lead with the Bible, prayer, and so I want people to know that. Another thing that I'd like to point out that I'm not taking lobbyist money, special interest group money. Um, Besides that, I would say pray about. I would challenge and encourage everybody to do this. It's our civic duty, but not only that, but to really do some research, investigation, and not just vote for somebody because you've heard of them or because of any of that. So, like I said, it was kind of interesting. I was asked. I got to go first in a candidate forum the other day, and they said, "What's two things that you think is necessary for the people to know about you?" And I told him, I said, I'm a man of faith, first and foremost. I want the people to know that I'm a man of faith, and we pray about things and we're led by the Bible. And I said, and secondly, I said, I'm not taking lobbyist or special interest group money through this campaign. So that's the two things that would be a great takeaway. Besides that, go to my Facebook. You can see different endorsements, see different things there. If nothing else, you can get a laugh at the videos or make fun of me or something. I don't know.
Well, Brian, it's been a lot of fun to talk to you. And thank you so much for taking this time to
I
talk to
appreciate
me.
it.
And just wish you a lot of blessings for your upcoming election. So
I
thanks
appreciate
again
it
for the
very much.
visit. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Bye bye.